Excellent. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being with us today on this panel, which is titled Cloud Data Protection and Privacy. I'm going to be the moderator for this panel. My name is David Décary-Hétu. I'm an associate professor at the School of Criminology at the University of Montreal, and I've been researching illicit markets and cybercrime for the past 12 years now. So I'm really happy to be here today with these great guests. And so I will let them today introduce themselves to begin this panel. So maybe we'll go with Helen first. So if you want to just say a few words, introduce yourself to our participants.
Thank you, David. Hi, my name is Helen Oakley, and I'm a senior product security architect at SAP. I work at the global organization to implement security controls in all SAP products. And I'm also co-founder of Leading Cyber Ladies. So we support diversity and promote women in cybersecurity and help them achieve their goals. I'm very excited this panel because data privacy is always on top of my head, and I'm looking forward to this discussion.
Thank you. Thank you. Dishank?
Oh, thanks, David. My name is Dishank Rustogi, and I'm a senior manager within BDO's cybersecurity engineering practice. I have over 13 years of experience within technology risk and cybersecurity, helping my clients develop a comprehensive cybersecurity risk management program. I've done work through various industries, and more recently, I've been helping executives at small and medium-sized businesses understand how their cloud programs are being implemented, driving an alignment with risk and security functions so that they can ensure that they get the efficiencies and desired scale from their cloud strategies and do so in a risk-based and secure manner. Like Helen, extremely excited to be a part of the panel.
Thank you. Thank you. And last but not least, Hammoud.
Hi, how are you? My name is Hammoud Rabah. I'm here as a Director of Cloud Security Integration at RBC. I've been with RBC for roughly 11 years almost. I have lots of background with our traditional on-prem security controls. And recently I've been, for the past couple of years, been part of the cloud program here at the bank, helping to enable our cloud capabilities within the company, mainly looking at defining and designing security controls and evaluating security tools and helping to integrate them within our cloud capabilities.
Excellent. So thank you for being here as well. So if any one of the participants have any questions, please feel free to send them in. We'll address them as much as we can in the next few minutes. But just to get us going today and just to get us started, this panel is titled Cloud Data Protection and Privacy. And words really matter in security, and sometimes we don't really stop and just try and understand what is the difference really between data protection and data privacy. Are these two things exactly the same? Are they different? Can you do the two of them at the same time? Or what is your own priority? So among our panel here, who would like to begin and answer and discuss kind of this discussion? Maybe Dishank, you wanna take it first?
Sure, David. So I think data privacy and protection go hand in hand, but it is important to understand, like you said, the distinction between the two, because words are important in cybersecurity. So in my opinion, in plain words, I would describe privacy as it is who you intend to share your data with, and data protection is how you plan to protect your data from everyone else. Elaborating on that a little bit, I would say data privacy is about what people who have collected your information lawfully can and should do with it, and what controls they have over what controls you have over the retention and use of your data. We can think of privacy as a set of regulations or policies that govern the use of data and when it's shared with an entity. Data protection, on the other hand, is the mechanism, that is the tools or procedures that you would use to enforce the regulation or policy. I would describe it as a set of controls to secure confidentiality, availability, and integrity of your personally identifiable information.
Good. And if I turn to you, Helen, do you work in both areas? Do you find one of them to be more important or more difficult in your day-to-day work?
I think,
yeah. Let's go with Ellen first. We'll get right to you, Helen.
I think Dishank already provided an excellent distinguishment and explanation. What I can add to that is that We protect data, not only private data. We want to protect also other type of data. And this is where data protection comes at the wider scale, but definitely it goes hand in hand with data privacy. And when we're talking about privacy, we want to consider not only our customers and end users as a corporation, we want to consider also our employees and how we protect their data as well.
Yeah, yeah. And you were going to say, Hammoud?
Yeah, I was going to basically echo the comments there. They both go hand in hand, and depending on where you are in the organization, you may focus on your privacy policy as an organization, or you may be looking to implement controls to ensure that that privacy is realized.
Yeah, and when we're talking about protection, privacy, very often people are going to think about, you know, malicious actors, external threat actors who are trying to access this information, steal this information. Even in some cases, maybe in the case of nation states, for example, they're going to try and modify this information, something we don't really discuss very often. But basically, when you are all looking at data protection and privacy, what keeps you up at night? Are you most worried about malicious actors external of your networks, or are you more looking at insider threats? And when we're talking about insider threats, it can either be someone who's just making, you know, a Dropbox file public when they shouldn't, or someone who's actually malicious and wants to get back to their boss, for example. So which of these kind of internal, external, malicious, or unintentional, where do you see kind of the main challenges or the main areas of focus or concern? Maybe we can continue with you, Hammoud, if you want to take this one.
Sure. I mean, I find this one very interesting because in my experience, malicious actors will always take the path of least resistance. So if you don't have strong internal controls to govern what you put in your cloud environments and how you configure your cloud environments, it would just make their job so much easier. So when it comes to, you know, what keeps me up at night, I would say there's no one over the other. Both are tightly coupled. And if you don't have strong governance and strong controls over how what you're putting in your environments in cloud, it will just make the job of the malicious external actor so much easier. So I mean, I think where I like to put my focus is, you know, ensuring that we have processes and procedures and technologies in place to make sure that, you know, we're watching for config drift and we are able to monitor and respond to those scenarios that will help bolster and strengthen our internal configurations. And also, you need your tools and technologies in place to help prevent the external threat actors from getting in. But definitely insider threat, both you know, accidental misconfiguration and malicious insiders are key.
Yeah, yeah. And Dishank, you wanted to jump in on this?
Yeah, I would say, David, that in my opinion, I worry more about the internal threats. I want to say both unintentional as well as malicious.
Yep.
I have that viewpoint because, like, traditionally I've seen, at least in my experience, organizations, cybersecurity strategies focus a lot on external threats and have built a plethora of controls and detection mechanisms to identify threats from outside the organization. Right? Equal importance or focus isn't paid on building controls against insider threats. Right? If I were to put some numbers to give context to it, based on a recent Ponemon Institute survey, from 2018 to 2020, the number of insider incidents increased by 47%. Right? The total cost of insider threat has increased from 8.76 million to around 11.45 million in those 2 years as well. Yeah. So basically, malicious insider threats also have an advantage over other categories of malicious actors because they have familiarity with the business applications, processes, procedures, and people. They're aware of, you know, what versions of applications or tools are being used, and basically can, you know, use that to exploit some vulnerabilities around there. Unintentional is even more, I want to say, scary because you're basically putting the organization at risk without even knowing about it.
Yeah. And we know how easy it is to publish something on GitHub with, you know, a private key that you're not supposed to share. It happens, I'm not going to say on a daily basis, but pretty often. Helen, are you also concerned more by the insider threats than the external ones?
It depends what we're looking at as business corporation, right? So I am personally on product implementation side. And of course, we do the threat where we try to prevent from data leakage by implementing different controls in our applications to make sure that externally and internally there is only the minimum privileges that are given to people who are working on the products and etc. But if you're talking about the organization, something that we cannot really implement is an internal threats. So I agree with other panelists here, because intentional will always be there. People will find the things to do, around to work around the certain controls, but unintentional are scary. Example of phishing, right? So when we talk about data privacy, we don't always talk about phishing, but I think awareness among employees in a company is very important to prevent those flaws and have people clicking or giving away their credentials by mistake, and then external threat actors can access the system.
And at this point, I'd like to get back to something that Hammoud, you said when you were talking, you mentioned the low-hanging fruit, how attackers are going to go for the low-hanging fruit. Today, we're all about the advanced persistent threat, these sophisticated nation-state actors. Do you see, and you don't have to disclose any big secret today, but do you see these attacks targeting, for example, RBC or the other banks, in Canada, mainly more of the low-hanging fruit type, or are you seeing the majority of the work of security people fighting off, these advanced persistent threats and these sophisticated actors?
Yeah, I would say that the big things that we're watching for are ensuring that our misconfigurations are caught, right? So if something is being implemented that does not adhere to our standards, something simple like a public storage account, right, where data is being put out into our cloud environments, and we don't want to be in a situation where it's unintentionally made public, for example. Those are like the low-hanging fruits that I think we can easily ensure are on our radar and we have good mitigation and response to. As well, aside from that, we also look deeply into all of our security services that we want to implement in cloud, and we look at all communication paths and for all patterns that we're looking to enable to ensure that either we understand how data could be exfiltrated, and we either have mitigations in place or have a roadmap to get mitigations in place. So we do both, things that the low-hanging fruit, so to speak. We ensure that we have playbooks and responses in place for those. And where it can be a little bit more complex and more difficult, we definitely don't write them off as low likelihood, so we're not going to think about them. We ensure we've enumerated all data loss channels and ensure that we understand what mitigations are in place. Yeah.
And I mean, just ticking off this low-hanging fruit checkbox, it can be difficult for many organizations. Are you seeing, I know Helen and Dishank, you're probably working with a lot of partners and a lot of companies. Are you seeing kind of this ability for companies to check off this? We've covered our back. We know that no low-hanging fruit are hanging out there, and we can actually protect our companies. Is it something that's easy or manageable for most companies from your experience? And yeah, maybe you can start with Helen.
Okay. So when we talk about partners or third-party organizations, of course, we want to check and make sure that they are secure, because actually, while we have a huge cybersecurity department who is looking at all kinds of aspects of security, our software, our company, and monitoring those threats and addressing them, we have all these multiple partners who can bring the risk right into our company. So we have to go through different processes and make sure that they are following those aspects of security and they are protected. So they're not being kind of like a backdoor into our organization.
Yeah, very true. The third-party attack is something we do need to consider. Yeah, and Dishank?
And I would agree with Helen there, David, that basically third parties bring a plethora of risk to the organization. Specifically, when I talk about small and medium enterprises, I've seen that not a lot of due diligence happens when a third party has been incorporated or is basically being used for their product or services. But I want to say with recent events, I think more education is there, more awareness is there. And clients are coming back and asking questions as to like, now we have like 10 different service providers working with us, providing us different services, having information which is confidential or proprietary to our organization. What is it that we can do to make sure that, you know, there is no risk coming from them having access to our information? So I want to say recent events have made people more aware about things. And that's why like questions are being asked. Are we there yet? I don't think so, but at least people are asking the right questions.
Yeah, well, you know, making the best of a bad situation, basically.
Agreed.
And that's kind of a good segue, because many organizations, many people work in companies may be wondering, you know, can you store any information in the cloud? Can we trust the cloud with anything, the most sensitive information, the formula for Coca-Cola, for example? Would you, as cybersecurity specialists and professionals, and maybe we can start with you, Helen, are you ready to put everything in the cloud, and do you trust the cloud to protect the privacy of this information?
In many cases, well, the answer is depends, right?
Yeah.
But I would trust secure cloud solution more than somebody's laptop.
Yeah.
Because, right, so the reason we move everything to cloud is to avoid that local machine access, broken access or something. And when we're talking about corporation who uses cloud to store the data, of course, they implement different controls and access controls and measures to make sure only those who need access to that information can have access. So there is a lot of thought has to be put through while you're choosing your cloud solution and how you implementing, because solutions, many solutions provide good features, right? But misconfigurations and lack of good implementation can even have the best solution ever leave you with vulnerabilities and data leakage. So definitely need to think about that.
And Dishank, maybe you can hear you on this.
So David, I completely agree with Helen there that it depends. But I think it's important to talk about the actual decision-making process for an organization, where how they decide whether they need to keep critical information within their own control or on the cloud. I want to say, like, generally organizations should be able to identify what their crown jewels are, what kind of regulations and contractual requirements they have, and turn that into a kind of a business impact assessment to figure out if that kind of information, like you said, the formula for Coca-Cola is leaked out, or is someone has access to it, what kind of regulatory, financial, reputational impact that will have on an organization, right? And based on that assessment, an organization can decide if they want to store, what kind of information they want to store on the cloud versus what they want to keep on-prem and have complete control over.
Yeah.
Due diligence process is extremely important, like Helen said, that when you are going with a CSP, a cloud service provider, you need to understand what kind of controls they have in place to be able to make sure that they're able to meet your regulatory and contractual requirements and keep your information secure.
Yeah. And I don't know if you have anything to add to this, Hammoud, or?
Yeah, I mean, the panelists have done a great job. I mean, controls are key. Data protection is made up of a wide range of controls, and depending on what the use case and the application is, some or all of them may apply. And I think one key thing to add there is, you know, it's not just about implementing the controls, but it's also about your ability to monitor them over time and respond when needed. I think transparency is key, because a lot of times it's a business and risk decision. So from a security practitioner side, we need to be able to advise the business or the client on what controls they have in place and what risks they would have to accept. And at some point, that transparency becomes, you know, the central part of the discussion.
And I really love your answer, Helen. And you know, I see you want to jump in on this, and I'll add another question for you. You mentioned that, you know, you would trust more a secure cloud than a laptop. You know, how do you know if a cloud is secure? So
yeah, so I wanted to add to that question. That's why I'm kind of raising. Because it also depends on the organization and how big organization is. Somebody like SAP, who is a global and huge monster, right? We have our internal cloud and it's closed from external access and stuff like that. For smaller business, for small or mid-size, it's a more challenging topic, right? To maintain your own cloud system with confidential access. So they have to assess the solution. And this is where the challenge comes. How do we know that it's secure? We have to assess. We know it's been proven that storing sensitive documents on a laptop is not a good idea for many reasons. First of all, the access can be obtained by somebody else. Second of all, ransomware, it happens, want it or not. And if you're losing the critical documents, it can be a problem, right? So in that case, I think cloud is a better solution. It's more secure, but you need to assess your controls and implementation of that cloud to really understand how secure and how to implement it.
Yeah. And so far we've talked a lot about data and protection, privacy, but we have to keep in mind that there are people who are managing these clouds and making sure that they're going to be private and they're going to be protected. And when all of you are looking at your teams and at your colleagues, what are the skills, what are the training, what makes a team successful at providing secure and protected and private data clouds? So maybe we can start with you, Dishank, or Hammoud. Let's go with Hammoud.
Sure. I think this is a great question, because building up a team that can help with cloud security is a very challenging task, because first off, you want to have people in your group who have a good, solid, wide range of security experience and background. The reason being, your build, cloud security and cloud, all the different areas of security are very tightly coupled, and you need somebody who can have a good understanding of all those different areas of security. So having that solid security background is key. However, having people as well in your group who may not necessarily have the security background, but also understand cloud very well is key. So I think marrying those two worlds is the challenge. Yeah. And from my perspective, having a good longevity in my security team, I'm trying to include a mix of solid security background with very bleeding edge, cutting edge cloud skills, incorporating those together to build a solid team.
So Dishank, is that the same on your end?
I want to say, I'll just add on to Hammoud's response there, that I would also look at folks who actually have a good understanding of the regulatory legal requirements, and they can turn those requirements into technical specifications, right? Because that's a good skill to have. Not everyone has it. So that is something that I would look for. Additionally, I would also say someone who has a good understanding of risk management principles, because you're having these discussions, like Hammoud said in a previous question, with business owners. So you need to be able to have the capability and ability to translate your technical requirements, risks into actual business language, so that the folks that are actually sponsoring you, putting the money into the solutions that you're putting together, are actually understanding what's the risk behind it and see the value of the solutions that you're implementing.
Yeah. And Helen?
And I find this question interesting. Actually, I find this question has two questions in it, right? Or two aspects. I like everything that's been said so far about the mixed skills and mixed team. It's not possible for one person to take care and make it secure. But what I wanted to add, you said, what kind of skills we need to make our cloud secure, right? So it's not only skills that we need, we also need a process around it. We need policies implemented across different aspects of cloud security and security in depth, right? So all those aspects together will definitely help to make secure. So it's not only skills that will make it happen.
Yeah. And to get back to what you're saying, what Dishank mentioned also, you're talking about policy. Dishank was talking about regulations. How much are these, policies and regulations driving what you're doing on a day-to-day basis? Or is it, kind of the desire to protect the data and make sure that it's safe and private and protected? Or are you always kind of facing or being kind of either impeded or, hindered by these regulations and policies? And Helen, maybe I can hear you on that.
Of course, regulations is a difficult topic because they're ever changing, they're ever evolving. We have to stay on top of it. It requires a lot of work to implement, to be compliant with regulation, right? To all aspects of either it's your product that you're developing or your company. And policies are the key to implementing those, right? The introducing those controls, multiple. And we think about many different ways. Right now, very popular, the software supply chain attacks. In old ways, we called it DevSecOps, right? So all those policies that have to be implemented in depth throughout the process are the key to make it more difficult for threat actors to get access to that data.
Yeah. And Dishank?
Maybe to jump in there, David,
Yeah.
I would say that, like Helen, if your policies, procedures, and ways that you want to secure your cloud are comprehensive enough, you will basically be in line with most regulatory requirements. Obviously, it's not easy to be 100% compliant, but the focus should be on securing your information, building the policies, procedures first, and then seeing how they align with what are your regulatory requirements. Obviously, regulatory requirements span across. So it goes hand in hand, but I'd say policy procedures take priority because that's how you're actually securing your information.
Yeah.
Maybe before we jump to Hammoud, just wanted to add, and Hammoud touched this point in another question as well, that I really think it's important, not only implement, but are ways to verify and check on those policies, right? So it's highly important aspect. So when you're implementing, make sure it's auditable.
Yeah. There's a huge difference between theory and practice in pretty much all fields. Hammoud, are you excited every time there's a new regulation that comes out? Is that a headache for you? How do you see these?
I've been working at the bank for some time, and so banking is a heavily regulated environment. So like it or not, dealing with auditors and regulators is part of the territory. So I agree with Dishank, is if you understand your regulatory requirements, you should be in a position where your internal standards align to those requirements, and you're using those to guide some of the security work, the security-led work in cloud. And so I think having a good understanding and partnering with your internal compliance and audit teams is key. Making sure that those requirements are into your product roadmaps, and it's not something that you don't want to have to come back and try to answer these questions when the regulator is there. You want to bake those controls into your work plans and roadmaps ahead of time.
Yeah. Excellent. So we're really nearing the end of this panel. So maybe I'm going to give everyone 30 seconds or maybe 1 minute tops if you want to share some wisdom that you've acquired over the years, and we can continue maybe with you, Hammoud, to begin with. If there was one piece of wisdom, one thing you'd like to share with our participants, what would it be regarding data protection and privacy?
I guess it would be having a strong cross-functional team has been paramount in RBC's cloud program, and I'm sure in other big organizations. It's not just one team that has to protect the data. There's various different controls and responsibilities across the board. And so having that culture and being able to bring everybody to the table, have honest discussions, and not be afraid of challenging and not being afraid of taking on the work when it needs to be done. Having that big cross-functional team is key. And if there's one thing to focus on, I think that's a very important one.
Dishank, on your end?
David, I agree with Hammoud there. Like, one parting thought that I'll have is that having a cross-functional team is like paramount, very important. But also, like, another point that Hammoud raised is don't be afraid. Break it into smaller chunks and basically go about your business or securing your business in a way that makes sense for you. There is no one magic bullet that works for everyone. And what one bank has implemented might not work for another. So build your security in the context of your own business is something that I would say that is very important, because you can't just copy and paste what someone else did into your own organization.
Excellent. And Helen, for the last words.
I really like what Hammoud and Dishank provided their feedback on this. What I wanted to add, we can get really busy with technical implementation and regulations, and often we forget that, first of all, it's about the human right? We thinking about people, and we're protecting their data. So if you will personalize and you also include your team from different angles, we don't always have diverse, I mean, from the background perspective, opinions in the same team, and a wide range of those opinions is important in order to implement a really usable and good solution for data privacy. So think about people who will use this at the end and how it will affect them. And it will definitely help positioning your implementations, not only compliant in regulations, but also make them usable, right? Usability is also a key.
Excellent. So we're almost on 2 o'clock on the dot. So I want to thank all the participants. This was extremely interesting. I feel as though we just gave a whole university class on data protection and privacy in 30 minutes. So thank you very much for your input. And for everyone else, you can move on to the next panel. And we'll see you soon. Thank you again.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.